I want you to pause for one moment and imagine yourself standing on a vast stage, facing a crowd of people who share your hopes, your fears, your battles, and your dreams. You feel the energy in the air. You sense the anticipation in their eyes, searching for a spark. Something real, something powerful, something that will ignite a brand new fire in their hearts. I want you to picture that, because right now, each of you is on that stage with me, and we are about to embark on a journey of faith, a journey of hope, and a journey of unshakable trust in God. Can you feel it? That slight thrill running down your spine is the call to believe in something greater than you, stronger than your doubts, and more loving than your fear. Why trust God in every situation? Because we've all been there, haven't we? We've tasted disappointment. We've wrestled with failure. We've felt the stings of betrayal. And on the toughest nights, we've questioned every single decision that led us to heartbreak. We've asked ourselves, where do I turn next? We've looked around and found no immediate answers. We've stared at the mirror, trying to figure out if our worth was tied to our performance. We've asked, is there a purpose for all of this? And deep within our souls, we felt the longing for an anchor, something that never fades, something that never runs away, something that stands firm even as life's storms thrash against us. That anchor is trust in God. Now, and I'm not here to tell you that life magically becomes easy the moment you say, I trust God. You and I both know trials will come. We'll face darkness so thick we can't see the way forward. But here's the truth. When you lean on God, you don't have to see the path perfectly. You just have to take the next step, trusting that His light will guide you through. That's what I want to talk about tonight. Trusting God in every situation. Even when everything screams at you to give up. I want to share that brand of faith that holds you together when you're trembling. That brand of hope that uplifts you when everyone else has turned away. Because in this world, you will face countless voices telling you to rely on your own strength alone, to chart your own course as if you're entirely self-made. But the truth is, the greatest victories in life don't come from isolation. They come from the connection between your heart and God's unfailing power. They come from a place where fear meets faith and the impossible becomes possible. Why does this matter so much? Because so many of us are suffocating under the weight of our uncertainties. We carry doubts about our abilities, our future, and even our past. We wonder if the mistakes we've made will haunt us forever. We wonder if the closed doors will remain locked for good. We look for answers in people, in status, in fleeting comforts, and end up more lost than before. Tonight is about a turning point, a moment to open our eyes, stand tall, and declare, I'm done trusting in my own limited vision, and I'm ready to lean on something bigger. That's what trusting God is all about. Surrendering that tight grip we have on control and saying, I believe you see what I can't see. And I believe you have a plan that's far better than anything I could ever craft myself. It's about letting go of the illusions that have held us hostage. Illusions like perfection, illusions like absolute certainty, illusions that we're going to figure it all out our own. It's about letting our faith release us from the cage of fear and stepping boldly into a new perspective. Let this message today be a push, a nudge, or even a gentle shove. We are not alone. God is with us in every situation. And as we dive deeper into how and why we can place our trust in Him, My hope is that each of you will remember this moment as a defining intersection in your life, the moment you chose to cling to God no matter what. The moment you decided to stand on the stage of your own challenges, look up and say, I'm going to believe anyway. Now let's journey together and discover the power, the truth, and the incredible transformation that happens when you trust God in every single situation. You might be asking, but how do I trust when things fall apart? That's our first step on this path, because it's easier to trust when life flows smoothly, when the job is secure, when our relationships sparkle with happiness, when each day brings a new blessing we never expected. Trust seems natural then. But can you trust God when you're standing in the rubble of lost opportunities or shattered relationships? Can you trust when your heart aches at 3 a.m. because the phone call never came, the test results were devastating, or the person you believed would never leave walked away without a word? It's in those fractured moments that the real test of trust unfolds. Let me tell you a story. Many years ago, I encountered a man who had lost everything: his job, his savings, his home, and for a time, even his sense of self-worth. He looked around and saw broken promises, dreams turned to dust, and people who vanished when the money dried up. Some of you might know exactly how that feels. You stand there, uncertain, asking, why me, God? Why this storm? He wrestled with this question until he realized something extraordinary. Every earthly resource had failed him, and yet somehow he was still breathing. Somehow he was still waking up each day with the capacity to try again. Somehow he was still standing, even if just barely. And in that moment, that man chose to trust God for the first time in his life. Not out of convenience, but out of desperation. He knelt down, tears on his face, and said, I can't do this alone anymore. If you're there, I'm asking you to show me the way. And slowly, little by little, things began to shift. He found part-time work that blossomed into a career he never saw coming. He reconnected with family members who offered him a sense of belonging that no job could provide. He discovered that the darkest night can lead to a dawn of understanding and compassion he had never experienced before. Here's the lesson: when everything you depend on crumbles, you discover the only foundation that stands unshaken is God. If we never face trials, how do we learn that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness? If our path is always illuminated, how do we learn to walk by faith and not by sight? So, when you face that rubble, remember it's not the end of the story. God's still writing. But what if you ignore this lesson? What if you cling to your pride, your independence, your illusion of total control? You may see temporary wins, but the moment the ground quakes beneath you, you'll find yourself flailing without an anchor. You'll feel the sting of loneliness when the help you thought you could rely on fails. You'll notice that your inner well is dry because you never tapped into the living water of God's grace. The toll of living in your own strength eventually wears you down. So how do you spot the warning signs that you're trying to handle it all by yourself? You feel a persistent anxiety that never goes away, no matter what you achieve. You notice your relationships are marred by a need for total control. You catch yourself thinking, if I don't do it, it won't happen, as if you alone hold the universe together. And the solution: start small. Start with an honest prayer. Ask God, show me how to trust you, especially when I feel alone. Then listen. Read scriptures that remind you of His faithfulness. Surround yourself with people who encourage your spirit, not those who poison your hope. Step away from the noise of endless news feeds and opinions and carve out silence to hear that still, small voice inside. Let that voice guide you one step at a time. This is the foundation of trusting God when things fall apart. You recognize that you're not in control of everything. And in that admission, you find freedom. You find that God's perfect strength shows up in your humblest moments of need. And in that humbleness, there is a newfound sense of courage. A courage that doesn't come from yourself, but from the knowledge that the Creator of all things sees you, loves you, and walks with you. Carry that thought with you as we move forward, because it will connect with every obstacle you face. It's the principle that transforms heartbreak into growth, fear into faith, and disaster into the fertile ground for your greatest blessings. And if you're willing to embrace it, you won't just survive the storms. You'll come through them stronger, wiser, and more in love with the God who never fails. Now, let's move to a second vital perspective on trust. Trusting God when success and abundance flow our way. You might wonder, isn't that the easy part? If life is good, if I have everything I need, surely trusting God should be natural, right? But here's the subtle danger. When life is comfortable, we often forget who the true provider is. We begin to think our accomplishments stem solely from our brilliance, our hard work, our connections. We puff out our chest, congratulating ourselves for every milestone as if we never had help along the way. And in that moment of pride, we risk idolizing our own abilities and putting God in the background. Let me illustrate this with another story. There was a young athlete who soared to stardom. He won championships, landed endorsement deals, and quickly rose to become a household name. Everyone around him sang his praises, calling him the hardest worker, the most naturally gifted talent they had ever seen. For a while, he felt invincible. But as the accolades piled up, so did his sense of self-importance. He started missing church, dismissing his mentors, and believing he was the sole architect of his success. No need to pray now. No need to seek wisdom from others. And surely no need to give God any credit. Then, one unfortunate day, a career-ending injury knocked him off the pedestal. His phone stopped ringing, the contracts dissolved, and the world moved on to the next superstar. Confused and resentful, he questioned how everything could fall apart so fast. He had built his entire identity around a talent that was now gone. Slowly, through reflection and the encouragement of a few loyal friends, he realized he'd neglected the most important relationship of all, his relationship with God. And he had taken every blessing for granted, forgetting that each gift was ultimately from a divine source. Here's the principle. Trusting God in abundance is crucial because it reminds us who the giver of blessings truly is. When you forget, when you treat success as a personal trophy you earned with no outside help, you become vulnerable to arrogance and eventually a devastating sense of loss when that success fades. Nothing in this world is permanent except God and His promises. When you build your life on temporary achievements, you're setting yourself up for a crash. So how do we keep trusting God when we're standing on the mountaintop? We practice gratitude, genuine, heartfelt gratitude. We wake up in the morning and say, "Thank you, Lord, for another day, for these gifts, for the strength to chase my dreams, for the privilege to bless others." We look for opportunities to use our success to serve, to lift others who need a hand, and to glorify God with our resources. We involve God in our decisions, big and small, consulting His wisdom rather than relying only on our ambition or intellect. We remember that every open door is not just an achievement, but also a responsibility. And what happens if we fail to do this? We become addicted to our own hype, craving the spotlight, terrified of losing it. Our self-worth ties itself to the cheers, the applause, the money, the status. And when those things inevitably waver, our sense of identity crumbles. The anxiety of maintaining a perfect image gnaws at our core. We may even start compromising our values to keep the success train going. That's no way to live. Instead, keep your successes on the altar of gratitude before God. Recognize that He's the ultimate source of every gift. By doing so, you stay humble, your heart remains grounded, and your blessings become a channel through which God can reach others, rather than a personal monument to your own ego. And here's where emotion meets faith again. You learn that celebrating blessings is meant to be a communal affair, a chance to express love, compassion, and generosity. You find that true fulfillment doesn't come from storing up trophies, but from reflecting the glory of the one who gives you the ability to earn those trophies. Trust in God isn't just for the valley, it's for the mountaintop too. And when you trust Him there, and you discover the victory isn't just winning the race, it's running with purpose, integrity, and a heart connected to the divine. That's how you transform fleeting success into lasting impact. Now, in the end, everything converges in a single powerful truth. God is trustworthy in every situation. When the nights are long and cold, and when the sun shines without a single cloud in the sky. We've explored what happens when your world caves in, and when your world seems to sparkle. But let's pull these threads together, step back, and see the bigger picture. If you walk out of here remembering only one thing, let it be this: trust is a choice that rewires your destiny. It's not accidental, it's not forced, and it's not something that just happens because you attend a church service or read a motivational quote. It's an intentional act of surrender, a daily commitment to say, God, I believe you are who you say you are. And trust is fueled by remembering how God has been faithful before. How He's always made a way even when the path looked blocked. So if you're dealing with heartbreak, or standing on a pinnacle of success, or somewhere in between, the choice remains the same. Will you rely on yourself alone, or will you anchor yourself to the one who never fails? Reflect on your biggest fear right now. Is it losing a relationship, missing out on an opportunity, or feeling that you'll never measure up? Bring that fear to God. Lay it at His feet. Then choose. Choose to trust Him. You may not feel a thunderclap of peace in that very second, but a steady calm will start to grow in you. Over time, that calm becomes confidence, and that confidence becomes courage. Eventually, you'll look back and realize God was with you every step of the way, orchestrating details, opening and closing doors, preparing you for something bigger than you ever imagined. Let's weave all these points into a single tapestry. When life hurts, trust reveals God's strength in your weakness. When life overflows with blessings, trust keeps you humble and grateful. And in every situation, trust reminds you that you are never alone, never forsaken, never unnoticed. God cares about the deep cries of your soul, the ones you can't even put into words. He sees your tears. He hears your unspoken prayers. He knows your dreams before you can articulate them. The question is, will you let Him carry you through this life, or will you fight every battle on your own? If you choose the latter, know that the load will get heavy, your spirit may grow weary, and you risk missing out on the peace that transcends human understanding. But if you trust Him, even if you don't understand everything, even if the timeline doesn't align with your plans, you'll find a stability and a purpose that no earthly success or failure can take away. This isn't about passivity. This isn't about sitting back and letting life happen. It's about partnering with God. It's about stepping out in faith, working diligently, loving deeply, and believing that every step you take in alignment with His will is guided by divine hands. Listen to me. Some of you are at a crossroads. You have a decision looming. Maybe it's about your career, your family, your health, your faith, and the weight of it is almost paralyzing. You've looked in every corner for a solution, but you're still unsure. This is where trust becomes action. Ask God for wisdom, then take that step. Don't wait for every detail to be crystal clear. We walk by faith, not by sight. Trust involves the willingness to proceed even when we see only a glimmer of light on a dark path. Because God's light, no matter how small it appears in the distance, is bright enough to guide you home. Remember the man who lost everything, and remember the athlete who had everything. They both discovered that true fulfillment only emerges when you recognize God's hand at work. You may have to let go of your pride. You may have to acknowledge your brokenness. But in that humility, you find real strength. And that's the paradox of trust. When you cling less to your own power, you gain access to an infinite reservoir of divine power. Through that reservoir, you can endure storms and bask in blessings with the same grateful heart. As I close this out, I want you to reflect on where you are in your life's journey. Are you swimming in success and risking the drift towards self-reliance? Are you stuck in a valley of despair, wondering if you'll ever see the sun again? Or are you coasting somewhere in the middle, not entirely desperate, but not entirely grateful either? Wherever you are, God is there. He's not hidden behind the clouds of uncertainty, nor is He overshadowed by the lights of fame. He's right beside you, offering a hand to hold, a shoulder to lean on, and a voice to guide you. The door to trust is always open, but only you can decide to walk through it. So walk through it. Challenge yourself to make that leap of faith. Will it be easy? Not always. But will it be worth it? Absolutely. Because the moment you taste the peace of knowing you are led by a loving God, you'll never want to go back to the chaos of walking alone. You'll find your courage expanding, your hope multiplying, and your vision sharpening. You'll start to dream bigger because you realize you're not limited to your own strength. You'll forgive more freely because you recognize you too are held in grace. You'll love more boldly because you understand you're loved by the very author of life. Now, I want to call you to action. Don't let this talk remain a set of inspiring words floating in the air. Take a moment today, right now, or as soon as you get a breath of quiet, and have that raw conversation with God. Tell Him your fears, your aspirations, your regrets. Ask Him to help you trust, especially in that area where you're most prone to doubt. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's your relationships. Maybe it's your health. Name it. Surrender it. Then watch how God works, often in unexpected ways, to bring clarity and renewal. Let's gather these truths and tie them all together into one final, sustaining note. When you trust God, you are stepping into a lineage of believers who have walked through fire and come out refined, who have sailed stormy seas and landed on steady shores, who have turned heartbreak into testimony and mistakes into ministries. Their secret: they held on to the promise that God never fails. And neither will you, as long as your faith remains anchored in Him. So carry this with you, whether you are on your knees in tears or on top of the world with a trophy in your hand. God is your constant companion. Don't let circumstances dictate your faith. Let your faith redefine your circumstances. The same God who placed stars in the sky is guiding you with His infinite wisdom. The same God who calmed the raging seas with a simple command can calm the storms raging in your soul. The same God who fed multitudes with a few loaves and fishes can multiply the resources you have, no matter how little they seem. And the same God who walked triumphantly out of an empty tomb is offering you a life of purpose and resurrection power. Every time you feel afraid, remember that love casts out fear, and God is the purest form of love. Every time you want to hoard your blessings as if you earned them alone, remember that you are blessed to be a blessing. Every time you stand on the edge of giving up, remember that God's strength is perfected in your weakness. And every time you question if God's still with you, remember, He promised never to leave nor forsake you. This promise stands firm through every season, every celebration, and every crisis. Finally, let me leave you with this image. Picture yourself holding a tiny seed in your hand. You can't see what that seed will become, but inside it lies the potential for a sprawling tree that offers shade, fruit, and life to many. That seed is your faith. Trusting God plants that seed in fertile soil, waters it with hope, and nurtures it with perseverance. Over time, it grows into a shelter, not just for you, but for everyone who encounters the transformation in your life. And one day, you'll stand in awe of how a small act of trust could bear so much fruit. That's the power of trusting God in every situation. It changes you from the inside out, and it changes the world around you. So go live courageously, love boldly, serve humbly, and through it all, trust God in every single situation, because He is always, without a doubt, trustworthy. Thank you. And may this be the moment you look back on as the day you decided to never again carry the weight of the world on your shoulders alone. Trust Him. He won't let you down. And if you believe that, say it with me, amen. Now, step into your life with renewed faith and an unshakable confidence that the God who brought you here is the God who will see you through.